So what did Guru Therut speak about? What did he talk about in his sermon? What were kind of like the main points in terms of the Dhamma? If you manage to stay awake, you'll probably have an answer to this question. So if you recall, he spoke about. So what did he speak about? I'll give you a chance. Pardon? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Practice the path. Don't waste your time. Don't waste time. In terms of like the Dhamma, what did he? In his last sort of half an hour or so, half an hour, 45 minutes or so, he kind of summarized what he was speaking about. So in that, what did he talk about? Beg your pardon? Okay. Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana, which is kind of an anthem, isn't it? Yes, Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana. Is it raining or is it the? Oh, okay. I thought might have been the AC, which is rather loud. But okay. Can't do anything about the nature. Yes, so Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana, but in sort of simple English, basically it's a process, isn't it? Process of Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana is the mind, which is a process, and a mind can be created 6 ways. Those 6 ways are what? Yes, senses, isn't it? Yeah. So sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thoughts. Those are the only 6 ways in which a mind can be created. And he said, there's only the seeing, only hearing, smelling rather, tasting, feeling touch, and thinking. Those are the only 6 things that happen. If I were to ask you this question, how do you know you are alive? How would you answer that question? Huh? Okay, when you pinch yourself, you feel touch, isn't it? If you say, the typical answers would be, well, I can breathe. How do you know you're breathing? Sound, touch, isn't it? Sound and touch, that's how you know you're breathing, isn't it? One could say, well, I can talk, I can have a conversation, provided the other party wants to listen to me. I can have a conversation, I can talk. How do you know you're talking? Again, through sight, sound. Whichever answer you give, it's a combination of one or 2 or more senses, or at least one of the senses. It's basically the senses, isn't it? So what we have to understand is that only the sensing process, or as Nayaka Hamdu referred to it as, only the business of sensing happens. Nothing more, nothing less. In Pali, it's referred to as, it's called Sankara. So in Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana, so Sankara, which is this process of like coming together. So only the senses happen. And he said, there's no one doing the seeing, and there's nothing to see. So this is the I wouldn't say tricky, but can be tricky for those of us who's not quite familiar with this concept. I know Nayaka Thero mentioned to this, mentioned this to you probably a few times now, because I listen to his sermons as well. That's what we need to prove. Once you prove this to yourselves, once you prove this to the mind, then mind will be free from suffering. Suffering happens because we feel a sense of, we feel existence. We feel an existence. In other words, we are trapped in time. Because we are trapped in time, or we feel time rather, we don't feel like it's a trap until you understand this. Because we feel time, because of that, there's this idea that I've been living for however old we think we are. Let's say if someone's 30 years old, you feel like I've been living for 30 years and these things happened to me in the past. This can happen to me in the future. And these things are happening to me now. Because of this, there can be fear or anxiety in the worst cases, depression even, fear. So these things happen because you think that something can happen to you. This person who's been living, who's been existing for the past, in this case, for the past 30 years. Okay. Let's say if this is true. Lord Buddha said, Guru Tero quote this as well. Lord Buddha said, Ditte ditta mattam bhavisati. So he said this to whom did Lord Buddha say this to? That's it. To a Brahmin at the time called Daruchirya. He was a merchant, if I recall the story correctly, he was a merchant. Back then they didn't have cargo planes, so therefore you have to carry cargo and take your stuff. You had to go on a ship, and his ship, I think there was a storm or something, and there was a shipwreck. He shipwrecked, and he washed ashore. But he had this idea that he was already enlightened, and one of the Brahmas told him, "Actually, you're deluded. You're not enlightened. Someone who's truly enlightened exists now. He's the Lord Buddha. He's there. As in he mentioned where the Buddha is residing, and he was desperate to find out the truth. Therefore, he traveled to meet the Buddha, and I think, according to the story, he traveled for more than a day to meet the Buddha. And once he met the Buddha, all the Buddha had to say. So when he met the Buddha was actually having his midday alms. And as you know, typically when monks have midday alms, we don't really talk. We don't pause it to have a conversation with someone, especially to explain the Dhamma. We don't preach in the middle of our meals. But the Buddha made a one-time exception for him. Buddha only said 4 lines to him, and he understood and he became enlightened. He said, Ditte ditta mattam bhavisati. Only sight happens. Only seeing happens. He said, Sute sutamattam, only hearing happens. Mute mutamattam, feeling happens. Vinyate vinyatamattam, which means thinking, only thinking happens. So he said, only seeing happens, only hearing happens, only feeling happens. Feeling means smell, taste, touch, and only thinking happens. Vinyate vinyatamattam. Vinyana as in Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vinyana, the last step, perception. Only those things happen. Straight away, he like some of the dots connected, some of the missing pieces of the puzzle were filled, and boom, he's enlightened. And then what happened? Normally, when someone becomes enlightened, and he becomes high ordained straight away. he gets ordained. But back then there was no difference like there was no like people became high ordained straight away back then usually. So what happened was he went to find himself some robes. So back then there was no back then I think sorry in his case he had to go and find some robes for him, because normally what happens is that whenever the Lord Buddha ordains someone, usually robes are someone offers the robes, or there's an Atapirikara or eightfold Pirikara nearby. But in his case, he had to go and find it. But he struggled to find one. So the reason being, that's why he had to wear, I think, stuff made out of leaves and branches and stuff like that. The reason why he couldn't find anything, any robes, was because he's never offered, you might not believe this, he's never offered an Atapirikara in his entire sansara. Think about it. For us, it's, whoa, that's nuts. I mean, how is that even possible? Like, we offer an Atapirikara, I mean, you probably offer one every Sunday or every Saturday if you come to the monastery. That seems near enough impossible. But if you think about it, though it's so common for us, I mean, even in this world, there are probably billions of people who's never even offered an Atapirikara. So it's such a rare thing. So in his case, he's never offered an Atapirikara in his entire sansara. So because of that, he couldn't find robes. And soon after, later that day, he got, I think a bull attacked him and he died. That is why the Buddha paused during his alms to have a conversation with him, to explain the Dhamma to him, because he knew that he's going to die later on and he's very wise, therefore he doesn't have to say much for him to become enlightened. So that was his story. So yes, Lord Buddha said, Dittya Dittya Matang, those 4 lines to Venerable Daruchirya, and he was given the position of, you've probably heard of 8 great elders. Asu Mahashravaka Mahansela. He was one of them. He was given the title, he was given the title rather, of the quickest to understand the Dhamma. Because 4 lines, he's got the job done. Which is a lot different from our case. I mean, we've been listening for, I don't know, donkeys years, but still not much progress. Anyway, so let's evaluate this statement. So let's take a simple example. So let's take a flower. So now, or rather, yes. So here, when you're looking at a flower, if you were to evaluate this experience, we feel like I'm looking at a flower. I'm over here, the flower's over there. That's how we typically feel. Now, how do we know there's a flower there? Seeing happens. Yeah, sight. Isn't it? Color, basically. So, because of color, we know we feel like there is something there. But where are colors created? In the mind. Good, you were awake when he said that. Okay? So, colors are created in the mind. So, if I draw it down here, would you be able to see? Actually, let me draw it there. So, colors are created in the mind. At one given point, if you were to kind of go down to the level of a single mind, the entire flower isn't created straight away. What's created is like a little dot, little pixel of color. But we don't need to go that deep. We don't have too much time. So let's say colors are created, and when these colors are, and then these colors gets arranged in a particular way. I mean, these colors appear in a certain arrangement. It's a bit like on a screen. When you see something on a screen, if you were to see an image of a flower on the screen, what's happening over there is the same thing. It's pixels generating color, and when these pixels, I mean, I can't say generating color, but conventionally, superficially speaking, pixels generate some color, and based on where those colors are, based on where those colors appear, based on the pixels in which those colors appear, it has the outline. It looks like a flower, but it's just pixels, isn't it? It's like if you were to see a pizza on a screen, you're not going to go and eat the screen, are you? Because you know, at least in that scenario, that this is fake, that this is just the mind. Okay? As in that case, you know that the colors are just on the screen. So it looks like a pizza, but there's no actual pizza there. So same thing here. If all the colors are generated in the mind, what's really there, so that means there's no flower there, isn't it? What's there is energy. So though it looks like a flower, in reality, there's energy there. So we don't actually know what it looks like, but it's energy of some form. Let me ask you this question. Does the effect, or can an effect, know about its causes? Because, as you know, colors are an effect, isn't it? Color is an effect. If you were to consider okay, so let's see quickly. According to science, according to what we know, light interacts with the energy that's here, and then a reaction happens over there, and whatever this can't absorb gets reflected our way, and another reaction happens in the eye, as in the cells in the eye absorbs a bit of it or whatever it can, and then the signal gets into the brain, etc., and then color appears. If we were to turn the lights off, would you be able to see the flower? No. Which means color isn't in the flower, or it's not coming from the eye, it's not coming from the nerves, it's not coming from the brain. Okay? Let's say we turn the light turn the light back on, but we remove the flower. Then would you see the flower? No. Which means what we did was we proved now that color isn't coming from either one of the causes, isn't it? But when all these causes come together in a particular way, color appears. Color is something that appears. So, it's the mind. It's a bit like this. You know, in the candy procession, Nura Perahara, you have fire dancers. So they have these bowls of fire, and when they rotate it, it looks like a ring of fire, isn't it? Yeah. Is there an actual ring? No. So color is like that. Color is like that ring of fire. There's an actual ring. It's just those, however many, usually typically 3, isn't it? Let's say 3 bowls of fire, but it's stuck to sort of like a metal frame, and when you spin the metal frame fast enough, it looks like a ring. But there's no actual ring. Okay? Same thing here. Color appears. Not from anywhere. That's why the Buddha said, Hetum paticca sambhutam, like a ghost, appears out of nowhere. Or in other words, those causes coming together is color. Because rotating of the balls of the fire balls is the ring. Okay? So color appears. Does that make sense? It just, when those causes come together, color appears. Not from any of the causes, they just appear. Therefore, is there a flower there? No. Now, the next thing, so there's no thing, there's no object. Let's look at the observer. But we still feel like now we are looking at something. How do you know when you're looking at something, isn't there a feeling that someone is behind the eyes, in between the ears, under the skull or inside the skull, under the brain? Do you not feel like there's someone in this shell, in this body? Do you not feel like there's someone in there? Kind of like, what's his name? Kind of like Tony Stark inside the Iron Man suit, right? If you get the reference, it's like, do you not feel like there's that kind of feeling? Like you are inside, or like back in medieval times when you have knights, they would wear special sort of armor. It's like, do you not feel like that when you're looking at something? It's like someone's in this cave, like in a cave kind of thing, and looking out there. So again, how do you know? Okay, so you feel like you exist and you are looking at that. How do you know you have a body? How do you know that you have a body? Again, short answer is senses, isn't it? Yeah. Like you can feel, right? Feeling, so touch, feeling, and you can say sound and color. But mainly color and touch. That's how you know you have a body. That's why when you sometimes when you sit down, normally during sermons, you are very privileged, because normally in other places when they do sermons, they get the devotees, they get the listeners to sit on the floor. So that's why thank you merits that you get to sit on chairs, because normally you're meant to sit on the floor. So when you sit on the floor for a certain time, your legs kind of go numb, don't they? So when your legs go numb, when they go really numb, you don't feel your legs, isn't it? So you don't feel your legs. So, which means that if the legs really existed, you should still feel it, isn't it? So if you didn't feel touch, you wouldn't feel like you have a body, isn't it? So it's bunch of tactile sensations. That combination is given the reference or the label body. Just like this combination of color is given the label or the reference flower. But it's actually collection of color, bunch of colors. I mean, this collection of colors appears in a certain way, to which we've been told to call that a flower. So similarly, a body is basically a combination of touch and color, mainly. And we know color and touch, or sight or colors and touch, happens in the mind. So where does the body exist then? Where does the body exist? In the mind, or body is the mind. Okay? So what's here then? Again, we don't really know. It's probably energy of some sort. So basically, what's happening is that there's a, there's a transaction between energy. Transaction between energy. That's all that's really going on. In reality, that's what's happening. Perceived reality is this story. Someone is looking at something. So we proved to ourselves that this something and someone are, are basically illusions or imagination, because it's a fabrication of the reality. It's just, or you can say, the mind playing tricks. So this is that experience of I or someone looking at the flower, I am looking at the flower, that is just the mind. That's not happening in real life. So but what's happening is that this transaction is happening, to which the name seeing is given. So this transaction is given the label seeing. So only seeing happens. That's what that means. Only seeing happens. Because colors are the mind. Sound, smell, taste, touch, senses are the mind. Thoughts are the mind. Because it's thanks to thoughts is how we can kind of like describe or explain or try to make sense of this make sense of what's going on. Therefore, only seeing happens. Doesn't make sense to everyone. Because the flower is in the mind, or flower is the mind. The person doing the seeing, that is also the mind. So seeing happens, that's it. So when we say, I am looking at a flower, the truth is looking. Or rather, you can't say looking, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling touch, thinking. There's no one doing the thinking. Sometimes when we have, like some people have told me that they get intrusive thoughts. We feel like when we are reminded of a past incident, we get kind of sometimes traumatized depending on what that event was. And we feel we get angry, we get upset when we are reminded of past events, because we feel like thoughts belong to us. We feel like I am doing the thinking. Okay, let me ask you a question. What is the capital of Sri Lanka? What is the capital of Sri Lanka? An answer came to your heads, right? Is it Kotte? Okay. Kotte is the capital, right? Now, Colombo is the financial capital, isn't it? Administrative capital, but the actual capital is Kotte, isn't it? So now, okay, let's say some of you thought of Kotte, some of you thought of Colombo, doesn't matter. So some of you thought of Kotte. If you are the owner of that thought, can anybody else have that thought? Can they get that thought? If you are the sole owner of that thought, Kotte, yeah, then can anybody else have that thought? No. Because if it's yours, isn't it? Like you won't let anybody else use something of yours without your permission, isn't it? Like you won't let anybody else ride your car without your permission, right? Because it's your car. Only you can go in it. Like that. So if that thought belongs to you, then nobody else can have that thought. But a lot of people here had that thought. That means that thought is a result. So it's not you doing the thinking. Bunch of causes came together and the thought Kotte manifested. When you have team meetings at work, when you have to find a solution to a particular problem, do you not have multiple people in your team, multiple members in your team coming up with the same answer? So if you are the owner of those thoughts, then how can they get those thoughts? Isn't how come they think of it? That can't happen, isn't it? So this proves that when some causes come together, thoughts manifest. There is no one doing the manifesting. Who's okay? Who's manifesting this flower? Who's responsible for this manifestation? Who's responsible? No one. That's the thing, isn't it? For the, like, we might feel, because we might feel like I am responsible, but let's say you exist, but you're only providing some of the causes. This cause, the light, you're not providing that, so you can't claim full ownership of it. So therefore, there's no one doing the manifesting. It happens, isn't it? So likewise, you don't own your thoughts. There's no such thing as your thoughts. It's just thoughts. Therefore, when you feel like these thoughts bother me, this is what you need to think about. Thoughts appear for, we don't know what the exact reasons might be. It could be something like, for example, I know there are some people, they get triggered by fire. They get triggered by, so there are certain triggers. So we don't know what those are. Triggers are basically causes. So we don't know what all the causes are, but thoughts, so like sight. For sight, we know what the causes are. For thoughts, we might not know what the causes are, but there are causes. So even thoughts, they also manifest. And there's no owner for those thoughts. Okay? So that's what those four statements mean. Dittya ditta matta means only seeing happens. Nothing to see, and there's no one doing the seeing. Because you see, the energy that's over here, the energy that's over there, the bundle of energy that's over there, that is in a dynamic equilibrium. It's never fixed, or it's never the same amount of and same bit, the same energy all the time. Dynamic equilibrium is another characteristic of energy. How can we prove this phenomenon of dynamic equilibrium? Well, one of the easiest ways is to, if you were to bring a hot cup of water to a room, let's say we bring it in here, water is at 100 when you boil it. When you bring it in here, the room's, I'm guessing about maybe, the room is probably about 20 odd, I'd say. What would happen to that water? It would cool down, isn't it? It would cool down to that temperature, which kind of proves that energy is exchanging, isn't it? How can we prove that minds are also, because a mind is also an aggregation of energy. How can we prove to ourselves that minds are also in dynamic equilibrium? How can you prove that minds are also in a dynamic equilibrium? Yeah, absolutely. Like, thoughts change. That's why. So when you hang out with a bunch of people who are interested in a particular thing, eventually you also become interested in that, isn't it? Let's say if you were to hang around with a bunch of people who are really interested in going to the gym, let's say prior to becoming friends with them, you had no interest in going to the gym. Even if it's raining, you wouldn't think of going into the gym, right? But eventually, when you hang out with these people, you also become very interested. That's why the Buddha said to always be with noble ones. That's why he said noble association is the key, because everything, and because the reality is energy. Energy is in a dynamic equilibrium. Because when you are with noble ones, ideas exchange, and your mind will change. Yeah. Okay. Therefore, this energy that is there, it's not fixed. It's in a dynamic equilibrium. Do you remember in one of the in many of the sermons? I think Naik Hamza might have showed this to you as well. He showed a animation of an electron. Obviously, no one's seen an electron, but it's like based on what we know about it, we've kind of constructed an animation of it. So in that animation, can most of you recall it? That animation. So in that one, energy comes in. As soon as energy comes in, some of the energy goes out. And when this happens, sorry, go down here. So bit of energy comes in, bit of energy goes out. In, out, in, out. Don't say shake it all about. So in and out, in and out. Now this middle bit, so it looks like there's something in the middle, isn't it? If I draw it sort of, it's hard to kind of draw this because, yeah, so there's like it looks like there's something in the middle, isn't it? Does that bit exist? Is there really something in the middle? No. Is there really something in the middle? No. It looks that way when this exchange happens. When this exchange is happening, it looks that way. It appears like there's something in the middle. Like that ring of fire. Okay? This is what we, so this is the state. So if you were to break things down to the basic level, everything is a combination of these things. It's a collection of these things. Okay? In other words, everything is in this state. Let me put it that way. Energy is in this state and everything is energy. Therefore, nothing remains fixed. It only appears that way. It only feels that way. Okay? And you see this middle bit? Senses. All the senses are like this middle bit. Or all the senses are this middle bit. Because color doesn't really exist in the real world. Color appears. All of your senses, I can't say all of you, all the senses appear just like this middle bit. Just like this middle bit. So you see here, I know we said light comes, hits the flower, or hits the flower, comes to the eye, signal gets sent to the brain, and then color appears. Actually, when I explain it like that, do you not feel like it happens in an order? Like, do we not feel like there's some kind of time lapse in between? But in reality, all of these causes, they also appear at the same time. Everything comes into existence at once. It's keep coming. Nothing ever stays fixed. So that's why when you contemplate the Dhamma, be mindful of this. Causes are also effects, and everything comes into existence at the same time. That is what Paccuppanna means, what's been presented. So everything, this entire experience, comes into existence at once. Meaning all the causes, even all the causes comes into effect at once. It's not like the eye has been there all the time, all the while, and the flower has been there, light has been there, and light comes and hits this, comes to eye. Brain has been there all the time. No. You only know about the eye when seeing happens. Like, when you are listening to me, when you are listening to Guru Hamdar, when you're listening to a sermon, when you are really tuned in, did you feel your legs? You didn't feel your legs, you didn't feel your, you probably didn't even feel your body because you were tuned into the sound, because those minds, most of those minds were sound. That's why. Not really touch. Not many minds were touch minds. That's why you didn't feel your legs when you are fully, like when you're in the zone, when you're listening to the sermon, when you're in the zone, what we say, like samadhi, when you're in that state, in a deep state of concentration, you don't feel your body. Which means, because if the body has been there all the time, you should all feel it all the time. That's it. So everything comes into existence at once. Now here's the interesting thing. We know the flower is your mind, isn't it? Flower is your mind. Now, if you were to zoom into the flower, now here's another way to check if there really is a flower. If there really is a flower, when you zoom into it, we should still see a flower. But when you zoom into it, okay, let's say from afar, it looks like a unit, a fixed thing. But when we go closer to it, it looks like, then we see, actually it's the petals, the middle bit, the pistil, the stem. When we get closer to it, then we can see the causes, which already proves this theory, that there is no fixed flower there. And then when we further zoom into the petals and the flowers, we see cells. And then when we zoom into the cells, we end up at, I think Nagatero showed that video, right, of the lady's hair. Okay. And then you end up at the electron. Okay, when you are zooming into the flower, are you zooming into the flower that's out there, or are we zooming into our mind? Okay, okay, try to get this bit. When we zoom into the flower, are we zooming into the flower that's over there, or are we zooming into the image that's created in the mind? In other words, that is the mind, isn't it? So we are zooming into our mind. And then we zoom in, because flower is not a single mind, that's a collection of minds. Vijnana skandha. Skandha means a collection. And we zoom in, and then eventually we end up here. So we call this an electron. Is this really an electron, or is this perhaps maybe a single chitta? Isn't this your mind? So when we say we are zooming into something, are we zooming into the object, or are we zooming into the mind? Zooming into the mind. So this is basically, maybe, think about why Guru Thera wanted to show this to us. He doesn't do anything for no reason. Maybe this is a single mind. And a single mind is in this state. Because mind is a collection of energy anyway. So what you looked at in that video as an electron, was that an electron or was that your mind? So this is the mind. That's not an electron, it's a mind. So now think about it. It looks like there's something in the middle. Is there really anything in the middle? No. It appears that way. So your senses are like this middle bit. Now, I've been told to finish, so I'll say this and I'll finish. Okay, let's go back to that example of the ring of fire, Ginimalalla, as we call it in Sinhala. In that, the 3 balls of fire. If a novice were to were asked to create that ring, to do the ritual, or not the ritual, that act. Let's say someone like me, I've never done it. So if I were to do it, I would do it really slowly. And would you see a ring if I were to do it really slowly? No. But if I were to do it a bit faster, let's say 1 turn per second, which is pretty quick, but 1 turn per second, then we can kind of see a ring. The faster I rotate it, what would happen to the intensity of that ring? Does it shrink or does it grow? Grow. Okay? Let's say it's been turned at like, I don't know, million times per second. Then that ring would appear really thick. Yeah? And if we were to attempt to touch it, would we not feel it? If it's been rotated really fast, if you touch it, you would feel something, isn't it? So, when you see, this is like that. This is basically atoms or energy that's vibrating, molecules vibrating really fast, at a rapid rate. So when you touch it, it feels like something is there. So when you touch that ring of fire, you're not actually touching a ring of fire, isn't it? Because there's no ring of fire, isn't it? It only, but when you touch it and when you feel like, oh, there's actually a ring of fire. That's why when you touch this, you feel like, oh, there's actually a board here. But it's not. So that's the thing. So, does that make sense? So, I don't know if I complicated this even further. I was meant to simplify it. I was meant to simplify it. If I made it even more complicated, I'm sorry. Your merits. That's why, see, even Guru Tero said that you're so meritorious that he couldn't sort of bring the sermon to an end. Therefore, now I've been asked to explain this concept. Therefore, because of your merits, it went deep. I'm sorry. But I think you got the gist of it. I mean, Naikatero has been doing a fantastic job. So I'm sure you were already familiar with this. So this is what we need to prove to the mind. Prove that there is no object and there is no subject or there is no observer. Only seeing happens. Only the appearance of color. So Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana means this process, like colors appearing, notification, identification. Yes, I've been asked to shut up now. And finally, coming to the perception. Okay, right. I hope that made sense. Okay, so thank you for being a fantastic audience. May the Noble Triple Gem be with you all, and I will see you some other time. Tervasa.